So you wanted to make your Smash Mod UI look as aligned and clean as possible. Maybe you not even have any dead pixels or stretchy looking pixels or images in your important UI files, then this tutorial is right for you. I will be going through those files and explaining how to get them really nice and clean, and also make sure they all look perfectly corrected like it does in the game itself. I'm gonna start with two disclaimers, however. First, I will be using paint.net for this tutorial, but if you're using tools like GIMP, Photoshop, or even Clip Studio Paint, you can basically use those programs as well. The second disclaimer, when working on your UI file, please do not go ahead and stretch your images like this, like using this tool, the move selected pixels. Don't go ahead and shrink or make your image larger this way, because it's gonna result in like very bad looking UI. Like it's gonna look all stretchy, all blurry. It's gonna have a lot of things going on. For this reason, I do highly recommend that when working with your UI, always make sure to use the proper resize tool for the best results. If you're using paint.net, I would suggest using the settings that I have here. By the way, the higher quality image you have, the better. Let it be known that this either applies to either a render you created or a render someone made for you, or even just an official artwork that you managed to find online. This tutorial basically applies to basically any image that you have. Just make sure it's transparent. Okay, so here we have the first UI file, and this is going to be the Kara 0. This UI file is mostly used to display your high score if you're playing something like All-Star Smash, or your GSP, or basically your profile icon when you're playing online. It has a multi-purpose, I don't know them all by memory, but this is like creating a Discord profile picture, so it's pretty straightforward. Basically we have our UI file here. It is of course in 4K, so we want to shrink this probably around 310. Basically the point here is to align the image, make sure it looks as aligned as possible. You could do what I'm doing right here, where it basically aligns it like right here, then crop it and get like a clean image. Or if you're like me and just want to like perfect the alignment, I basically do a layer here, lower its opacity, and try to like place the face in the exact center, or like around here. Like around here is like pretty good, all things considered. Another thing, these icons itself actually does have like a light blur of sorts. Like if you see over here, by disabling transparency, you'll see like there's a lot of black pixels over here. This is basically a blur that it has applied. So this is actually pretty straightforward after studying it for a little bit. What you want to do right here is basically grab your current UI file, this one right here, make a duplicate, make sure to lower the lightness to completely dark. Afterwards, go ahead and apply a blur of 5 pixels, because that's what currently a lot of UI uses 5 pixels of blur. I will get more in depth into that. It's usually 5 or 4. And right now you basically have your UI finish for the profile picture, GSP, or whatever. You go ahead and save it. We'll go ahead and head over to converting that later at the end. Something I should mention, when you're working on any of your UI files, especially Kara 4, Kara 1, Kara 0, and Kara 3, what I would like all of you to do is to avoid any dead pixels around the image. What you could do is you could basically duplicate your image several times to make sure it doesn't have any dead pixels. As you can see right here, another thing you could do, which this is actually something I always like to do to avoid any dead pixels, I always like to select the area in the corners where there's fully transparent images, no black borders, and basically go to the main UI file and simply just cut it and save it. That way you avoid any dead pixels, especially when going through Kara 4, which we'll get to that later. The next image we have here is the Kara 1. this UI in particular is mostly used for the recolor base, which you basically select on the bottom screen. In this case, what you want to do is basically resize your full size render. You can go ahead and play around with it. It could be 650, 700. Honestly, you have to play around with it a bit. Grab the image, make a new layer, paste it. Make sure to keep the canvas size. Another thing I should mention, if you have your full size render, make sure to remove the shadow on the bottom of the screen, because then you'll have like slight issues and a lot of dead pixels going on when playing the game. So I would suggest you remove the shadow, but for this tutorial, I'm not gonna do that. I already updated this mod a week ago or so. So you're gonna go ahead and after you remove that shadow, just resize the image. I think about 650 is about good enough. And simply align it as close to the face as possible. Over here, you don't have to be as perfect as possible. Like I could put it right here and get a good alignment with Bowser. Like I said, I already did this mod previously, so no need to worry. Okay. So outside of that, once you got that aligned, do the same thing as Kara 1, where you go ahead, where you go ahead, make a duplicate dark layer. And in here, you could apply a blur of 405. I believe this one also uses 5. And in some cases, if you think like it's still a little bit too dark, what you want to do is simply change the opacity to 171, or if you're using Photoshop or Clip Studio, it's around 66 to 67%, and simply just save your image. Once that is done, we'll go ahead and jump right into the stock icon. This is pretty straightforward. There's not much to say about this. I do want you to make sure that when you're doing your stock icon, you could do like a high quality image stock icon. It doesn't matter. But when shrinking it, make sure it's always 64x64 pixels. Because if it's larger than that, it's gonna take, of course, a lot of time to load. It's gonna look odd, may have some dead pixels. If you're doing your own UI and want to make sure it doesn't have any dead pixels, I'd suggest like cleaning up the first pixel of every border and then just simply cut it out and you should be good. I'm not gonna go ahead and do a custom stock icon. I already did a couple of them myself, so this one's gonna have a little bit of a pass, but it's pretty straightforward either way. Something I should mention, not only in regards to the stock icon, but also Kara 0 and Kara 1, these images should always be 512 times 512, 128 times 128, 64 by 64. Never go larger than that. We will be the reason why it may just look stretchy, blurry, or just not so good, and also a lot of long loading times. However, for the Kara 3, we're gonna go ahead and jump into that. This one's gonna be interesting because this is the only UI file which in some cases you could actually expand the image upon. So I gotta give a little bit of shout outs to Joey T for figuring this out. So let's go ahead and discuss Kara 3. So Kara 3 is a very special case because this is one of the renders where a lot of people will get very odd results, such as either stretchy moments in the versus screen or like unaligned placement. Honestly, it's gonna look rough. So there is a workaround for this. So you have your large UI image right here. I'm gonna go ahead and resize it to around, I guess, 1500. I'm gonna make a extra layer. Okay, it could be larger. I'm gonna go ahead and lower the opacity of the layer because what I want is I want to align it with the eye. In this case, you always want to align the UI you're working on with the eyes of the other character you're working on. I'm gonna go ahead and resize it again around like 2000. Okay, it could be slightly smaller than 2000. But the idea here is basically to have a good alignment. You don't want like a very huge image, so on and so forth. So I think like 1850 would do. Okay. Yes, this is basically a good alignment right here, 1850. So here's the thing. At this point, a lot of people would just save the image as is, and it's gonna result in a very weird position. Like I said, you're gonna get this in a lot of cases and a lot of modes. It's gonna look stretchy. It's gonna look aligned, but it's gonna look stretchy, like you see here for Mega Lucario. We don't want that. We want it to look as clean as this right here. So for that reason, what you want to do is basically, you're not going to resize, but you're going to change the canvas size. In this case, you always want to make your anchor the middle part. And what you want to do is you're either going to expand this or this. It could be like 100 pixels, 50 pixels. Let me go ahead and say I want it to be 2052. Okay, that's pretty good. I could go ahead and make it larger. Say 2452. The idea here is basically when you repaste your image, you basically want either almost the full render to be shown. Let me go ahead and align it where it was, like around there. Because basically you don't want for example, the hand to get cut. In some cases, if the render you're replacing, let it be, I don't know, Daisy. In these cases, if the render actually cuts the top arm, then in that case, you can go ahead and leave it as is. Some renders actually cut off the character's feet or shoes in some cases, but in the case of Bowser, you could see it's showing the full render. So we want to do the same as well. Over here we still have the hand cut, so we gotta go ahead and keep resizing. I believe 30. Around 30, let me paste. Yeah, around 3052 actually did the job. Of course it's not like perfectly aligned, it's like right there. So that would be a perfect alignment. That way the portrait would never get cut, never get stretched. Basically it would look as perfect as Mega Lucario right here. After that, we're gonna go ahead and apply the same thing we've been applying all day. Make the layer, make a duplicate layer. Whoops. Make it dark. Apply a glacial blur of 405 and change the opacity to 171. And there you have it. Basically, you'll have a perfectly aligned Kara 3. As always make sure, let me go ahead and fix that. Always make sure that when you merge your image, use your magic wand to scan around and basically cut. That way it only keeps the blur in the image and no dead pixels show up. So right there, we basically clean Kara 3. Always make sure to align the image with the eyes of the character. If not, you're gonna get some wacky results. Just always make sure, as you can see right here, they're like semi-aligned. Of course, this is not as perfect, of course. Like I said, I already released this mod already, so but this is like the best position. I think I could showcase an example right here. Yeah. Especially when you're playing 8-player Smash, like 4 players or more. If you don't align it, it's gonna look weird. So in this case, as you can see, it looks pretty aligned, pretty clean, all things considered. So always make sure to have things aligned. And again, like I stated, you always want to make sure that your portrait is fully aligned. Like right now, I'm gonna select the artwork just so you can see another example. I'll resize this to like 50 or so. Make a duplicate layer, like a new layer. In this case, I have to align the image with the eye, like I stated earlier. I'm gonna do this again, like right around here. You're gonna have to stretch the image, and I could see like his claws over here are like cutting out. So you're gonna like increase it. I'm gonna say 1732 and 1000. Oh wait, that's over. It's gonna be 2000 or 50, and over here like 2000, just to keep like a good amount of size. Make a new layer, paste, align with the previous image. Give me one moment. Right around here. Yeah, okay, so it's still cutting the effects right here, but you get the idea. You don't want the image to get cut, but I'm just gonna leave it as is right now. After that, if you feel like there's too much space, what you could do is basically resize the canvas size again and like go smaller. I believe over here I can make it 18. 18? Okay, 18 is like a good amount. Go even further. The smaller the better, because basically you'll save file size. I could go like 17.8. Okay, that's a little bit too much. 1730. Whoops. 1730. I think I screwed up there. Let me go ahead and do it again. And yeah, like it's good. It's not like cropping out the claws or anything. And with that, you basically duplicate layer, hit dark, opacity at 171, glacial blur of glacial. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm Spanish, so make it 5 or 4, and you should be good. It should look as clean in game as possible. Should be aligned as perfect as possible. Just always make sure the image doesn't get cut unless the render you're replacing actually cuts the image itself. Just let that be known. The next portrait we have here is the Kara 4. It's one of the portraits where people have a lot of trouble because they usually have a lot of dead pixels going on. So I'm going to show you how to avoid that. This is another of the images where you could go ahead and resize it, but you don't want to resize it a lot. Of course, it is a small image. There is a layout you could use to basically have like the image aligned, like right here. Basically, I created a new layer and aligned the image with Bowser to have an idea what should get cut. This is also one of those creative UIs where you can make certain parts of the render pop up. So I'm gonna go ahead and create another layer here, and I'll make it blue just so you can get an idea of how it should look. Of course, if you feel like, oh, it's going up the top, you can go even further. I believe Falco's render is like the largest one in terms of like length. So if you feel like there's more space that you need to add, you can go ahead and add it. I'm gonna go ahead and add Falco's render. They expand, and then okay, it didn't expand it like I thought it would. Then again, I could just go ahead and change the canvas size myself, which is 302. Oh, it has a 302. Wrong way. Even though you could also do it that way. Then just space the image and align Falco right there. Yep, that is the perfect Falco alignment. Yeah, this is basically an idea of what you could get. So in here, you're gonna have to resize your image to a much smaller portrait than usual. I believe 400 would do it. Let me go ahead and hide these. Of course, this one you can go ahead and be pretty creative with. I'm gonna go ahead and lower the opacity. I notice this is kind of large, so I'm gonna go ahead and shrink it even more. 50. Paste. Good enough. This is actually a pretty good enough image. So once you got your image done, a thing that these kinds of UI has is basically this little shadow. This is not a blur. I suggest never apply a single blur to the Kara 4 because you're gonna have dead pixels, gonna look slightly off, and you don't want that to actually happen. So I don't know what happened there with Paint.net. So here we have the Dark Bowser render. I'm gonna go ahead and make a duplicate, make a dark render. Now instead of blurring the image, you're gonna go ahead and move the dark layer 5 pixels to the left or right and 5 pixels down. It's always 5, no matter what. And then you want to go ahead and change the opacity from 255 to 77, or if you're using Photoshop or Clip Studio, it is basically 30%. It is always 30%. Right here, you'd basically have a good idea on what the render should be. So I'm gonna go ahead and merge these two images together. I'm gonna go ahead and lower its opacity by just a bit, like right there. I'm gonna go ahead and open up this right here. Gonna select the layer with the portrait template. I know you could basically use other tools, but for the tutorial here on paint.net, I'm gonna do it like somewhat not rough, but a simple way. I'm gonna go ahead and select the area outside of it. As you can see, it's basically selecting all this outside. So you want to go ahead and play around with it. So let's say I want like Dark Bowser's cheek to be like popping up a bit. I can go ahead, just delete the arm a bit. Again, this is one you want to play with. Of course, I'm not using my tablet. I should have stated that earlier. Around there, I could go ahead and remove the shadow from here. Basically, the shadow always stays inside, at least most of the time. I could remove the arm. Chin could stay popping out. Of course, this is just a rough idea right here, so just bear with me. I'm gonna keep the horns out, so I'm gonna remove this area. Go ahead. The hair should stick out, so I could just delete all this. And right now, you basically have like a somewhat clean Terra 4. Right now, if you want to go ahead and bring the image, you can go ahead and do so. Always make sure it's the canvas size. I think I could change it over to 252. The point here is basically it does not cut the pixel at the top. 254 instead. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good, all things considered. We can go ahead and delete all the layers, and now you just want to do what we usually been doing. That way we avoid any kind of dead pixels. Grab your magic wand, tolerance at 0, select around, and simply cut. One thing for certain, always make sure there is one border, at least one pixel up top that is currently cut. You don't want any part of the image to go through this. If you do, you're gonna get the stretchy image. You can go ahead and look around and see there isn't any dead pixels, so it should be good to go. You can simply just cut, and right now you could save your image and you should be good to go. I guess I accidentally cut the pin over here, but either way, like I stated, I already updated this mod, but you get the idea. Basically make your Terra image pop out as best as possible. Just don't over exaggerate it. The next Kara image that we have here is the Kara 6. This particular portrait is used when you're using a Final Smash in-game. It's actually one of the most straightforward UI images you could work with, and it's one of the few UI images where you could actually flip and get a good result. Like right now, you always want to make sure your UI portrait is looking to the same direction in every single UI, as you can see, looking left, left, everything. But this one does have the exception. So because when you use your Final Smash, depending on what side you're looking at, the display image actually flips and shows up like in the left side of the screen or the right side of the screen. It's pretty random, I think. I haven't paid much details to that, even though I do play with a lot of Final Smash and stuff. But either way, you just want to make sure that your image is aligned in the same way. So we're gonna go ahead and resize this. I believe I could resize it to 400. Is 400 good enough? Okay, that's too small. Let's say 1,000. Good enough. It could be larger. 1,500. Okay, 1,500 is good enough. Now, like I stated, this is one of the few UI images you want to go ahead and flip. Considering Dark Bowser's looking left, it may result where his eyes actually get covered. So I'm gonna go ahead and select the same render I just resized, and I'm just simply gonna flip horizontally and align the image with that of Bowser himself. Again, like the Kara 3, always make sure aligned it as close to the eye as possible. Okay, that's actually pretty good. And surprisingly, this is one of the few UIs that actually doesn't use a blur. And if it does, it's pretty random when it does. Some characters have it, some characters don't. But it's the same blur and dark opacity as the battle portrait, the Kara 4. So you can go ahead, make a duplicate layer, make it dark. In this case, you're gonna use Glacial Blur 4 and make the opacity 77 or 30%. And with that, you have this UI completed for the final smash. Last but certainly not least is the Kara 7. This portrait is mostly used for the character select icon. Basically, when you're selecting your character, basically this is the UI icon they usually use. Of course, this is a little tricky. I've seen a lot of people have issues with this, but it's honestly pretty straightforward, so I'm going to go ahead and explain that. First, you want to go ahead and resize your image to something as close as possible. I'm going to select 500, but I may not like it. Could be a little bit. Say 544. Okay, 544 seems to be like good. Again, you're gonna want to align your portrait with the face itself and the eye, so like right around there. Something I should mention though, this UI actually has a blur around the image as well as an opacity change. So for this particular case, what I like to do is go back to the large render that I already resized. Once it's resized to like a good amount that actually fits the portrait itself, I want to go ahead and instead of making this UI the dark layer, I'm going to make the one over here. So I make a duplicate. I'm going to make it dark. Now for this blur, it's going to be 4 again. Or 5, 4 or 5. But you're going to go ahead and make a duplicate layer and move the image 15 pixels down and left or right. Once you got that, you want to go ahead and merge both dark layers and then make it, I believe it was 151. No, I think I could check right here. This is how I usually check. I basically go here, select the color picker, go to Bowser's render, and I see it is 179. I don't know why I said 171, but basically I go back, go here, make it 179. Then I could just go ahead and merge the images together. And then I could go ahead and just simply place it right around the, right around the same area right here. And this you'll get a perfect alignment. It won't look stretched out. In some cases, it honestly, this one depends on the character selection screen mod that you have. Like sometimes if you're using the hexagon mod and you're changing, let's say, Pichu's icon, you may get like a small stretch on the bottom part, but it doesn't really matter as long as it fits the vanilla canvas size and it doesn't look as bad. You should be good to go. And go ahead and remove Bowser's render right here, fix the opacity, and as you can see, it is a pretty clean and straightforward right here. Like I said, I already have this completed. See here, you could technically have an idea on what it looks. Oh, another thing that I actually like to do, now that you're seeing this right here, something I love to do is basically compare the image right here. Like as you can see, it goes like through this eyebrow and then it gets cut like at the cheek right here, lips. So if I go back to Bowser's render, I could have an idea. It basically makes it right around here to around that area, like somewhat around that area, stretches all over to the elbow, like the elbow, I mean the arm, like around that area. This is basically like the area if you have like all the characters unlocked and stuff like that. So I guess it does show a little bit of the hand, like the tip of the index finger. So like around that area. Something I like to do is I like to go ahead and open up an extra layer, make it dark, and then basically align the image with both things. As you can see, this is basically going to give you a somewhat good result on what the UI is going to look at when you when you go to the character selection screen. Like I showed before, right here, Dark Bowser does look pretty aligned compared to Bowser himself. So this is just an optional thing to do, but I always recommend doing it just because it will give you like a pretty clean result on what you need to do. This is actually something you should do first. I know I stated this beforehand, but if you want like a clean UI alignment, I suggest go ahead and do that with any type of UI that you're working on. After that, you can go ahead and remove the other things. Here's the opacity of what you worked on, save your image, and you should be good to go from here. Now it's time for the conversion part. So let me go ahead and open up Ultimate Text. Yeah, I noticed that the hand here is cut, but of course this is just demonstration purposes. When you're working on your UI, don't do these kinds of mistakes. This is just mistakes I do when working on a tutorial. I should state this is actually the first tutorial I've done, especially voiced, because I've noticed that a lot of people actually learn watching a tutorial over reading it. Even though it depends, I know each one has their own way of learning, so just to be clear, I'm just gonna go ahead and use this as a base, or use whatever I had previously so I could show you what the conversion process is. The conversion process is pretty straightforward. You're gonna need Ultimate Text. Considering it is UI images, you're gonna have your folder right here. I already converted these when I was working on the mod itself. As you can see, I have Kara 1 over here, Kara 0 I should state, I have the PSD files for the new hair and the previous hair. So you want to go ahead and grab all your PNG images. Go ahead and select each and every one of them that you worked on. Throw them inside of Ultimate Text. Now, this is the UI. Make sure you place it at BNTX. Color alpha. Always disable MIP maps for UI. I've noticed a lot of people have MIP maps enabled for their UI. That is no bueno. It's gonna have a lot of mixed results. It's gonna look pixelated. The file size will be bloated. Always have it disabled for your UI. And of course, make sure the compression is low for the better quality. You can go ahead and save to original or save to a folder and simply export. And you're gonna go ahead and have some pretty good results. I'm gonna go ahead and show you. Once you click export, you're gonna have like pretty clean results. Like I said, you can go ahead and check these results in Switch Toolbox. Let me go ahead and open any BNTX Kara 3 since it's one of the most important ones. And I don't know what's going on. Oh. As you can see, it's pretty aligned, pretty clean. If you turn on the transparency, you will notice that everything over here has a black border when you disable the transparency, the alpha toggle I should state. And if everything shows up in a dark black color, that means it has no dead pixels most of the time. Of course, you're gonna have to test it in game, but like I stated earlier, if you select around the image beforehand where you think it's like fully transparent and then go ahead and cut it, it will always result in good. It would always give you like the perfect result, especially for a Kara 4 in those cases. So always make sure to use the magic wand on every single UI. I guess somewhat of an exception would be the stock icon, but at least the first pixel of the top needs to be as low opacity as possible or just cut. So just to have the most cleanest results, always make sure to clean up your UI with the magic wand in a low tolerance and just simply cut it. As simple as that. With that being said, you would get pretty clean results in your game. You're not gonna have any dead pixels. Your images will always be as aligned as possible. And with that, I believe this tutorial is complete. I usually do not do video tutorials like I stated earlier. I usually like to stream these tutorials because I could go more in depth, but I thought I should change this to like, I should do like a mini change to like practice for future tutorials. So I hope this would help you and everyone out there to create pretty clean UI. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next tutorial if I do another one. Whatever. Peace out. Take care.